I'll make that 10 o'clock, so can we now start the meeting? And Christine, is it yourself? Could you confidently send her and take any apologies?
Yeah, I will do, Chair. So we have Councillor Douglas Reid.
Present here.
Councillor Jim McMahon.
Present.
Councillor John McFadden.
Present.
Councillor Elaine Cowan. Councillor Maureen Mackay.
Present.
Councillor Ian Linton.
Here.
Councillor Graham Barton.
Yep.
Councillor Barry Douglas.
Yep.
Councillor Neil Ingram.
Yep.
Councillor Claire Maitland. Here. Councillor Drew Filson. I have an apology from Harriet Johnston. Do we have Babs Mowat?
Present.
Alan Bent.
Yes, here, thanks.
Thank you. Norman Watt. No.
Yes,
Here.
Here, thank you.
Oh, thanks, Norman. And Jackie Livingston.
Yes, I'm here.
That's great. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Christine. Okay, just the next items are declarations of interest. I don't see anything obvious. Unless any like kind of correct me, or if there's any declarations of interest you're not sure about, could you come forward? Okay,
Sorry,
is there
Chair.
no...
Sorry, Chair.
Yes.
Councillor Douglas has got an interest.
Thank you. Just to declare interest in item 7, as I am a member of the Take About board, and I will withdraw from the meeting at that point.
Thanks, Barry. Okay, anyone else? Okay, straight then to the item 2E, and that's the early learning and childcare allocation policy and criteria for funded places in early childhood centres, funded providers and childminders delivering 1140 hours. Linda, are you going to kick this off?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Sorry about the long title of that paper, but this one will be over to Janie to present this morning.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. Yes, it is a long title. So this report seeks approval from Cabinet for revisions to the early learning and childcare allocation policy and priority criteria for the allocation of funded places and patterns of hours in our own early childhood centres, our funded providers, including childminders for eligible 2-year-olds and entitled 3 and 4-year-olds. Recommendation 2 in paragraph 2 seeks Cabinet approval for these revisions, and recommendation 1 notes the new duty to provide an additional year funded early learning childcare to all children who are not aged 5 by the school start date and whose parents choose to defer their primary 1 start from August 2023. Paragraphs 3 to 5 provides the background to the duty in local authorities to provide up to 1140 hours of funded early learning and childcare for all 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds and eligible 2-year-olds, while paragraph 6 to 8 notes the uptake of funded places in the current academic year 2022-23. The table 1 at paragraph 7 sets out the estimated total population of 2, 3 and 4-year-olds in East Ayrshire, according to the National Records of Scotland, the total estimated number of eligible children in academic year 22-23, and the actual uptake of places in the current academic year. It's encouraging to see that just over 98% of 3 and 4-year-olds resident in East Ayrshire are accessing a funded place, and that 58% of eligible 2-year-olds are accessing a place at the current time. As 2-year-olds are eligible in the term after their 2nd birthday, this figure is likely to increase in the new year. Paragraphs 9 to 12 highlights the extension of the entitlement of funded early learning and childcare to 4-year-olds who are eligible to start school and who are not aged 5 with a school start date. And as I said previously, this will take effect from August 2023. Table 2 at paragraph 11 notes the estimated total population of 5-year-olds and the uptake of an additional year of funded early learning childcare in academic year 2022-23, and you will see there's 136 children there. It's anticipated that the number of parents choosing to delay their child's start date in primary 1 will increase year on year, which may have an impact on the demand for places in some of our early learning and childcare settings. Paragraph 14 describes the experience of implementing the policy in the current academic year, which includes the implementation of the flexible framework for early learning and childcare, with the addition of 2 new funded providers. We now have a total of 7, and 42 childminders offering 1140-hour places. And I think it's important to note that 2 childminders are providing the totality of the funded hours. These new providers and childminders have increased parental choice, which has resulted in additional resourcing for independent sector places. Parental preference for patterns varies year on year as each new group of eligible 2, 3 and 4-year-olds access a funded place. Pattern demands are assessed and places available in each pattern are capped to allow effective management of staffing levels. Adjustments to the number of term time and full year early learning and childcare staff are made to maintain appropriate ratios as per the pattern of placements, which could be a term time place, a long morning, a long afternoon, or full day places across 48 weeks of the year. The entitlement to funded early learning and childcare hours for eligible 3 and 4-year-olds is exactly the same. And to reflect this, revisions have been made to priority 6 and priority 7 of the allocation policy criteria. This now notes that all new applications for children, rather than specifying the separate age groups of 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds. The defined geographic areas which are included as part of the allocation process and as illustrated in paragraph 16 should be retained for priority criteria 3 and 6 to ensure that early learning and childcare settings are not impacted by oversubscription of applications. However, these geographic areas do not apply to childminders as there is not an even spread of childminders across East Ayrshire. Once places have been allocated in an early learning and childcare setting, if the demand for particular patterns of hours are oversubscribed, then the priority criteria will be applied to allocate the pattern of hours. And if oversubscribed within the criteria, a ballot will be required. As highlighted in paragraph 18, there continues to be occasions when parents ask if the criteria in the allocation policy can include children who have siblings in the associated primary school where there is an early childhood centre. However, as there are approximately 9,000 children attending primary schools in East Ayrshire, this would disproportionately disadvantage children who do not have a sibling or siblings in the primary school. Therefore, this is not included in the priority criteria. Paragraphs 22 to 28 set out the risks in terms of demand for places, which include parental demand for particular early childhood centres and particular patterns of attendance. These vary year on year as new families take up places and as families move across the area to access employment or housing. Population changes and demand fluctuations can also cause both short and long-term capacity pressures. And the need for ballots to allocate places or patterns where there is oversubscription in early learning and childcare settings where demand for places exceeds the capacity within that setting. The policy implications are set out in paragraphs 29 to 33. The revisions to the allocation policy criteria will be implemented for the allocation of places for academic year 2022-23 onwards. However, the policy will be reviewed on an annual basis and any revisions or amendments will be brought to Cabinet for approval as required. Scottish Government committed to publishing a strategic childcare plan before the end of this calendar year, and the publication of this high-level plan on the 6th of October, entitled Best Start, Strategic Early Learning and School-Aged Childcare Plan for Scotland 2022-26, sets out the vision and the key strategic priorities for the totality of early learning and childcare policy in Scotland until 2026-27. It's important to highlight these strategic priorities now as the plan builds on the success of the 1140-hour expansion to date and seeks to build a future system of school-aged childcare and a new early learning and childcare offer for 1 and 2-year-olds. Finally, Chair, the allocation policy criteria is set out in Appendix 1. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jenny. Excellent report. Do we have any questions?
Councillor Mackay's looking to come in, Chair.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Morning.
Yes, thank you very much for that. Thank you. Janie, do we have any indications when 1 and 2-year-olds will be included at all? Any Any hints even?
I think the work is at a very, very early stage of development, and it is anticipated that the further development of places for 1- and 2-year-olds would be by the end of the current Parliament. That's all the information we have at the moment.
May I also ask just what we have as the allocations policy, Janie, is that something that's consistent across Scotland, or is it particular to East Ayrshire?
Yes, it is consistent across Scotland, particularly in terms of priority band 1, where we're looking at children in need as per the criteria in the Children's Scotland Act 95, and also in terms of ASN legislation. So there is absolutely uniformity across Scotland in relation to that. I think as you move down the policy, depending on the local authority and the levels of deprivation in each authority, then you may see a difference in terms of specific criteria related to SMID 1 and SMID 2. But in essence and across the piece, it is very much a muchness across Scotland.
Very much.
Thanks, Maureen. Thanks, Jenny. Any other questions, comments?
Chair, Councillor McMahon's looking to come in.
Certainly, Jim. Yeah.
Chair, thanks, Christine. Just a reminder that paragraph 27, Jenny, I don't know whether you have this figure as a percentage, but you say the vast majority of parents are allocated the first choice. Do we know that as a percentage?
I think it varies year on year, but it is a very high percentage. But I can come back to you specifically with the detail of that for this academic year and the last 2 years, if that would be helpful to you. But we know the majority of parents do get the first choice. It's a very small proportion, but I couldn't give you the percentage at this moment in time. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Jim. We'll get some kind of indicative figure soon for members, if that's okay. Okay, anyone else?
No, that's
Okay.
everybody, Chair.
Thanks, Christine. Well, just what to do, we go to recommendations then. Can we agree recommendations? Yeah, take them okay. Okay, and then on to the next item, and that's the review of school meal payments. And is it Andrew or Linda? Andrew?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. That's myself. So, purpose of this report is just to consider some additional measures to assist in the management of school meal payments as part of the Council's ongoing response to cost of living. I'll come back to the recommendations. As members will recall, a Cabinet of 21st of September, when we discussed the cost of living report and the investment the Council was making, there was an ask around school meal debt and proposals that we would come back with a more detailed paper, which this clearly is that paper. The rest of the background section just sets out some of the current arrangements for school meals. Paragraphs 4 and 5 just talk about the existing free school meal provision. Primary 1 to 3 children have been entitled to free school meals since January 2015, and then there was a commitment from the Scottish Government to introduce universal free school meals for all primary school children, and primary 4 eligibility was introduced in August 2021 and primary 5s were introduced in January 2022. We are still waiting for a final date, but there's some further discussions over the last week at COSLA to just look at the implementation arrangements again, but we don't have a definite timeline yet for that. I suppose just in terms of clearly the report isn't just about free entitlement, it's clearly about the payments for school meals, and just noted in paragraph 6 is that the standard school meal price of £2.15 has been held at that price since 2019, and I think everybody will recognise that you see some of the prices that we're seeing increases, particularly in recent months. That is clearly or hopefully a significant benefit for those taking school meals. There is obviously a range of other elements within the lunchtime service. Primary schools, the majority of other children not taking free school meals will take packed lunches, and in secondary school there's obviously more children who will go down into different towns, etc., and buy from surrounding outlets. The impact of COVID really did make a significant impact on the school meal numbers and our uptake. We provided a whole range of different options over that period of time, and really it's only been since August this year that kind of, I suppose, as close to normal service has actually been resumed within the schools. As most of last term, we were still providing meals in classrooms, etc. So paragraph 10, just giving you a wee bit of an overview there, just in terms of where the numbers are at the moment. They have increased considerably since earlier in the year, but we're still a wee bit away from where we were pre-COVID. Obviously, the purpose of this report is just to kind of put in context the school meal service, and paragraph 11 really just outlining a range of other elements of support that are provided within schools, some on a kind of more informal basis, some clearly a more formal arrangement within the schools. And that includes obviously the use of our surplus food through the dining service, breakfast clubs. Some schools have got washing facilities and cooking classes that support families. There's a link in the paper there for some further financial information that's updated on the GLOW website, that's continually provides a range of information, both in terms of access to benefits, details of school meals, as well as other kind of financial support. And again, other more specific areas within individual schools where there'll be support for uniforms and clothing, food bank referrals and food share initiatives, as well as obviously some support for curricular activities, and linking in with other kind of charity organisations that are supporting directly within schools. So a range of other activities that just to kind of obviously put in context the support that's happening within schools. Around the school meals system, although there has been a significant shift towards free school meals, particularly in primary schools, there obviously is still the options within the service to provide a paid meal and families to take up that option. We have introduced the parent pay system, which also, as well as the school meals, provides a range of other kind of payment options within the school, whether it's for uniforms or school trips, etc. That system just provides that kind of online payment facility, and obviously funding through that system can be allocated into the school meal system. And again, effectively, it's no cash payments at the point of sale. We do still take some cash payments in some places, but the main focus is obviously increasing that use of the online payments. We also have a standard circular that's been in place for a number of years as well, to support the welfare arrangements. A key element of that is that a child is never refused a meal at the point of sale. And again, in essence, the system does operate effectively a nominal overdraft, so a child can still come up even if they've not got money in their account, and obviously would look to support that. The system does allow obviously information to be communicated to parents, and they can get access to the system anytime to see obviously what their balance is, etc. We do clearly have a debt within the system. That's set out from paragraph 20 to 24. And again, just to kind of give some context of the scale and the type of debt that's built up. I mean, there's clearly an element of families, and we can see that through the payment profiles, that some families are going into a wee bit of debt and then picking up a payment towards the end of the month. And again, there's no obvious group that are actually creating that debt. It's quite kind of spread across the whole kind of school population as well. We do transfer an element of the debt out of the payment system into the council's debt management system after a period of time. And again, that's obviously just set out in the report. So in terms of the proposed additional measures, as was referred to in the Cabinet paper of 21st of September, there are proposals around the school-based financial inclusion team and looking to kind of implement that. And I think kind of through the discussions, it's clear that the school meal debt process and the information that's available through that system would provide an opportunity to kind of link further assistance and further support through that team. And obviously the report just sort of gives a wee bit more background. There is a further report coming to council tomorrow. Again, sets out a bit more update and information around some of the other activities that the council have proposed around the cost of living, which again will link into the supports that are happening within the schools. The council does have an option of offering a discretionary free school meal where there's a welfare need. This is not a kind of formalised approach in most local authorities, but what we're proposing to do is put some funding towards that, which will allow through the financial inclusion teams within the schools and also guidance staff, etc., within the schools, that they've got that facility to draw down some funding to support that discretionary element. And that's potentially where there's maybe a gap in entitlement or where families have maybe got a changing circumstance with universal credit for a shorter period of time, then would be able to kind of offer that sort of assistance through that team. In paragraph 37, being promotion of free school meals is clearly one of the elements around us that the offer that is currently there in terms of free school meal entitlement is significant. Over the last couple of years, there's obviously been a link to a number of additional payments in terms of free school meal entitlement. And again, we do find a number of families that kind of do accrue a short debt in between the periods of when they kind of are identified as obviously being entitled to free school meals, and then basically the system processing them to be on the system. At the moment, we would backdate that offer, but clearly the discretionary option as well gives us a bit more flexibility there. But there are still a number of families as well and young people who are not taking their free school meal entitlement as well. So again, we'd look to kind of further target some of the marketing and promotional activity to support those families within the schools. The other area, obviously, is just around debt management that we're proposing. That at the moment there's a fairly low level of notification and then further action that we would take. And again, we're just looking over the next few months just to extend that period and the level of debt, just to give parents that wee bit more flexibility to be able to manage their payments and ensuring their children are still able to access their school meals. And again, there's potentially some anecdotal information where maybe there's been payments made into the parent pay system that haven't fed through into the cashless system. So just to make sure that all of those issues are kind of addressed before any kind of formal letters are issued. And again, we'll also give a bit of time to embed the financial inclusion team within the system as well. Again, paragraph 42, again, just noting that obviously implementation of the universal free school meals for 6 and 7, we expect further progress in the coming months, and potentially that could be looked to be implemented next year. So again, we'll continue to keep things under review. I won't get into the details. Obviously, members will see obviously financial, legal and HR and equality issues are noted. And I think there's obviously still some further areas there we'll continue to look at and address in terms of our targeted support. So I just refer members to the recommendations and obviously happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Andrew, for that report. Can I maybe ask just a couple of quick questions for myself, Andrew? just obviously, you're saying that, absolutely, any child that wants to be will get fed, and that's, we don't, that's a good policy to have. But I'm just, in terms of, obviously, we want to maximise uptake, and I'm just wondering, firstly, the first question is, initially there was some resistance, although it was a minority to, the cashless system. And I do worry that that's maybe some parents that don't have access to a bank account, or perhaps don't have any money in it. And that's maybe a barrier, but they maybe get cash in the house. Is that still a barrier? And are we able to, quantify and assist there? That's my first question. And secondly, following on the good work up at the pilot up at Loudon from the financial inclusion team, we managed to get 140,000 additional benefits to parents. How much of that, were we able to get the uptake in school meals and school clothing within that exercise? Because, for to roll that out, that could be really significant and really worthwhile doing. So just can you answer that one by those 2 points, please, Andrew? Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. In terms of the cashless system, I think there's a number of things that we're doing, and there is elements where we do still take cash. I think we're keen to develop some other options where card payments and online payments as well are offered, particularly in the secondary schools, where we see that kind of need, as you say, that young people have got different ways rather than just putting the money on the cashless system. I'll maybe let Mark come in just to provide a wee bit more update just around that one, and then I can come back to you in the pilot one.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Chair. With regards to the cashless catering system and the parent pay system, there's around about 99% of our parents have signed up to the parent pay system. Now, to use the cashless catering system, they need to transfer money into the cashless catering system. We are reviewing the cashless catering system just now, because obviously with universal free school meals, there may not be the similar use within our primary schools, but there's still the similar use needed and required within our high schools. We still take cash to a percent anyway within our high schools, just mainly around the kiosks, but we are looking at additional ways of the pre-order systems that we did have, which haven't really sort of worked for us just now. We're looking at a different system which will allow our young people to pre-order by an app, which is more reliable, and also pay in different ways where there is card readers available through the cashless catering system that we can introduce into schools, which allow them to either use their phone or a similar device to pay for that meal, which would just, again, the system was designed to reduce any stigma associated with free school meals. We haven't really seen any issues with that now, because there is elements of either pay by cash or pay by card or using your thumbprints, which we did remove during the COVID. We are recovering. We are on the basis of advertising and promoting the school meals. We're starting to see a recovery in the numbers coming through in the high schools and within the primary schools. And obviously the reduction in school meal debt in P1s to 5s with the introduction of universal free school meals. So we are working through different ways of how we can engage with young people to try and get them to come in and use the different systems. But we will still have an element of cash, and we will still have an element of pre-order and cashless payments. Thank you, Chair.
That sounds fair. Andrew,
I don't have access to the specific information in terms of the school meal and clothing grant. That's certainly something that we could certainly look to kind of find out. I mean, there's certainly a range of things that are measured in there, and obviously we've put a wee bit of information in the report. There's maybe some further updates either at tomorrow's council meeting with the main paper around the report that we could maybe provide that hopefully gives a wee bit further depth around that information.
Thanks, Andrew. That's helpful. Okay. Anyone else?
Douglas is looking to come in.
Okay, thanks. Barry.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to make a comment. Obviously, in paragraph 15, we're saying, a child has never refused a meal if they present the point of sale with no money. I have to say that certainly anecdotal evidence I have got, and I know other members have had, is that isn't the case. Where I know certainly of one child in particular who was very publicly told, you have no money in your account. And of course, she left the queue a bit embarrassed by the situation. I mean, obviously, the whole idea about removing stigma, I absolutely support in terms of the parent pay scheme. But the reality is that I think we do need to be making sure, and particularly as I feel the cost of living crisis bites even further, that we are absolutely making sure our staff are not stigmatising people. Now, they might not realise the impact that has, but for a child then to go hungry all day, absolutely unacceptable. On the other point of parent pay, I know about 4 weeks ago there seemed to be a major outage with it, and I hear often from parents, including my own family, who berate it as a system in terms of its ability. So what are we doing in terms of making sure that is working? I get these things are going to happen. We will have glitches, but it's to make sure that we aren't falsely putting people into debt, or that we are actually making sure the system's fit for purpose, or there's an alternative on the day.
I maybe just let Mark come in on those points, I think.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Chair. Councillor Douglas, yeah, I'm aware of the situation that you raised there, and we did send out communications to our teams again about that. So we're hoping that does never happen again. In terms of they wouldn't have been refused. I'm not sure if it was they were trying to offer advice, but we have asked staff not to offer advice over the counter to young folk coming through, and that should never happen again, hopefully. With the systems, like any systems, there is glitches, and the cashless catering or the pre-order, I think you may be referring to, we had an issue with, it's our own IT that has that issue, and that's why we had to pull the pre-order system in our high schools. It's nothing to do with the actual NRS or the cashless system or the actual app. It's our IT that's not allowing us to use that at the moment. With the new system that we're investigating just now, it is an app, right, and it won't be hosted through the similar issues. Those meetings will happen with our IT and NRS and Parent Pay's IT through Civica and the contract. Did we get that up and running properly? Sorry, was there another part of that question, Councillor Douglas? That's all. Thanks.
Councillor Mackay, Chair.
That's good. No, just before I let Maureen in, I mean, thanks very much for that, Mark. I mean, no child should feel like shame getting up in the dinner queue like that. And, if there is any evidence of that, most of our staff are very much obliging. But there are, if there is any, examples of that, please bring it up with Mark, because we just want to avoid that at all costs. Maureen.
Thanks very much. My first question would be about paragraph 28 and the Loudon Academy Pathfinder. Just for absolute clarity, please, on that, was that across the Loudon Education Group, or was that across Loudon Academy specifically? And what's the breakdown of that on a school-by-school basis, if it's across the education group, please?
Thanks, Maureen. Mark or Andrew?
So,
Andrew,
obviously, we would need to be able to kind of come back to you in terms of the breakdown school by school. It is across the education group, and obviously the kind of families in that area rather than just the secondary school. But certainly we can look to kind of provide some additional detail to members following Cabinet.
Chair, if I may just continue on, I think that's really important that we do that, because part of this exercise was about truly understanding and giving us some insight on where cost of living crisis was actually hitting. So I think, not to have that at this stage is actually quite a flaw in relation to the paper as a whole. May I also just continue on, Chair?
Yeah,
Thank
sure,
you.
Maureen.
I'm presuming that I'm going to have that in advance of tomorrow, Andrew.
Would like to get that, yes.
Thank you. And if I could go on, please, to the issue of debt management. I suppose, you know, the prospect of us actually pursuing debt for feeding children. I mean, you know, many of us are fortunate enough in this chamber to be parents. And I think we would all admit that we would do anything to ensure that our children had food, absolutely anything. And to be in the situation that we have a situation as elected members, so on behalf of us all, with the prospect of sheriff officers pursuing people for debt, and us having to have raised this issue to then have a paper presented to us saying that, you know, a step would be that we would extend that period before we would effectively have debt management company pursuing that debt for an additional 4 weeks. You know, for me, I have to say, it's just a horrific set of circumstances, and it is not one that I can sit here and say, you know, I'm happy for that to be done in my name. Could I then ask, in terms of the school meal debt balances that we've got, and obviously we can see what the new term increases are, and the new term increases are, I think, from August till September, effectively for a 6-week period. So, you know, that's stacking up at quite a considerable level of debt. What would be really helpful for us if we had, alongside that school meal debt balance, if we had some figures on actually numbers of children involved in relation to that, that would be helpful as well. But also to ask, given that there is more than a 4-week period, we're now talking about only taking this action of not sending in debt collectors for that. In the period from June onwards, do we have a breakdown, please, of the number of families where debt was actually pursued? Because again, you know, that's something that I don't have in the paper. And when I'm really trying to understand what this debt profile is, you know, these questions that I'm asking are the things that would have been helpful for me to have, to be able to fully understand what it is that's actually happening here.
Thanks, Maureen. Mark or Andrew, are you able to answer any detail on that?
So in terms of, I mean, certainly in terms of the debt balances and the number of children, then we do have that backup information. And again, I can circulate some further information to members. Again, what's set out in the paper is that high level figures in terms of what's in the parent pay system, and then what is noted as in the corporate system. The corporate system debts do include debts that go back a number of years, and obviously they would be picked up through the finance system. So again, there are also further steps prior to any transfer to debt management arrangements. So those initial responses would still be through the council in terms of looking to support people to recover that cost. Clearly, we do work within the council's financial regulations. And whether that's debt management or the setting the payment arrangements through council, that's obviously the context that this paper's presented.
Could I thank you for that, Andrew, and I'll look forward to those additional figures. Could I also please just ask, this is going back onto the recommendations that you said that you would take us back to. There is at point 3 in the allocation, in the recommendations, the allocation of £50,000 from the cost of living fund. Is that new money, so that's above the 2.9 million that was announced the last time that we had a cost of living paper, or is that actually subsumed within that figure?
Through you, Chair, the report that was presented showed a total allocation from the council of around £3.1 million. It left a small balance around, I think, from memory, about £300,000. The intention would be to take this £50,000 from the £300,000 that currently is outstanding, albeit the report that was presented previously, and I'm sure the report presented tomorrow will acknowledge that as we go through winter and as we learn more about cost of living, there will clearly be a need to bring further options back to members, mindful, of course, of the challenges we have ourselves around finances and finance.
I'm sure, yeah. Okay.
Chair, we've got Councillor Barton and then Councillor Cowan looking to come in.
Okay. Graham.
Sorry about that. Thanks, Chair. And thanks for this paper, Andrew. I welcome the proposed additional measures. But there's one thing I'd like to see added to that. It's on page 18, paragraph 35. The additional £50,000 can be used to cover 8 weeks discretionary free meals. Would it be possible to amend that and add this money could also be used to backdate any debt accrued over that kind of 8 period time?
Yeah.
Sorry, Chair. I don't see any reason. Obviously, we're just looking at the recommendations. The recommendations don't specifically note the detail. And obviously, what we would look to do is update the guidance that is going out to schools, catering staff, and obviously what the financial inclusion officers would be working to. So it certainly would be possible to update that guidance to include a period, obviously depending on the circumstances, where it's backdated, as well as obviously a kind of forward figure. So I think that would be possible.
Thanks, Andrew. Great to see that happening.
Thanks, Graham. Elaine?
Thanks, Chair. I've got a couple of points, if I can take them all at once. Andrew, thank you for this paper. I realise it was done at short notice from the September meeting, but obviously there's a lot of layers in here. We get into school meals, and some of it actually is really quite interesting. And I know from previous discussions I've had with you offline, there's some other things about the promotional campaign and things like that, and the uptake of school meals that's not really in detail in this. So I think there's definitely legs for us to do some more work here. I'd like to start with the debt management. I haven't saw any letters that go out for school meal debt, but I have saw the council's process for council tax debt, and some of that notification can be quite intimidating for the people in that circumstances. Now, I understand that's a debt management process, but for me, one of the long-term success factors with these financial inclusion officers could be a reduction in the number of these debt letters go out, so that could be a very good indicator of a success of the programme. So I'd like that to be considered. The appointment of the financial inclusion officers, I note that there's a bit of a lag time, which is described in paragraphs 26, 27. I'm wondering if there's any work the schools can do at the moment to set the ground for those financial inclusion officers coming into post, because obviously you have to do your appointment and your training, but the schools could be doing some groundwork, collecting data over the next 3 months so that these inclusion officers hit the ground running. I know at a recent secondary school meeting that Linda hosted, I think it was the William McIvanny head, presented a cost of living survey that the school had designed to work with parents. So I just think if we can start gathering that data in early, then we're really going to accelerate that work around the cost of living. And the other point was, my final point is about the recommendations. Recommendation 4 is about the follow-up reporting. Now, it mentions that there'll be a report at the end of the financial year, so I'd be interested in what kind of format that report will be and how it will be shared with elected members. And if I'm honest, and I know it's early days and you guys need to get that detail sorted out, and you also need to get these people in places working with the schools, but I think I'd be looking for some more exhaustive reporting and tracking of this work with the cost of living and the debt management, which also leads into what I think what Councillor Mackay was actually looking for as well. Thank you.
Chair.
Joe Gibson's on the call, who maybe be able to give us a wee bit of an update about some of the financial inclusion work.
Certainly, Joe.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I'm just actually in an email exchange with John Dalton as we speak. We had John primed to have us with us up to date a position on the financial inclusion recruitment in readiness for tomorrow's council meeting. The report going to council tomorrow is has a lot more meat on the bones in terms of all of the programmes we agreed at the cost of living seminar, including progress across the 6 themes. In terms of the financial inclusion officers, 4 have now been appointed and work's underway to get them trained and ready to join their schools catchment, and external recruitment is now underway to fill the gaps. I think Councillor Cowan's point is a really good one around how we could support schools to do that groundwork, to start having maybe some awareness raising with families about that this support is coming, and help families themselves prepare to come forward, and also give teachers some basics in some of the techniques or issues that we could be talking about to help families come forward. For tomorrow, we will have more detail on the Loudon pilot, and in fact, we're exploring the possibility of getting that out to members today in an elected members briefing, so you have that more detail for tomorrow in terms of the breakdown of what areas the increases were made in terms of different benefits and entitlements, and also the split of that between schools and early years, so that that's more transparent. We are, as part of the paper tomorrow, we have considered how we will demonstrate the impact, both the impact of the programmes we're putting in place, but also what communities are experiencing. So there's some suggested measures tomorrow about the things we will track, but I also think Councillor Cowan's suggesting about tracking those debt letters is another really useful indicator that we hadn't considered up to now, so we could include that. So hopefully we'll provide you more information by today. I think we'll have a more detailed conversation tomorrow, and then if there's further work to be done from then, happy to pick it up.
Chair, I think Linda's looking to come in at this point as well.
Yeah, so the hand there. Yeah, thanks, Christine. Linda.
Thanks, Leader and Chair. Just to come in from the schools perspective, in my own role as Chief Education Officer, this is work that's been ongoing in schools for several years around about financial inclusion. So as much as we are hugely behind the pilot at Loudon and clearly involved in that directly through the schools, we do have other ways that this is carried out in terms of the home link workers and indeed the staff. So the staff are already very well versed in matters around financial inclusion at both senior leadership level, principal teacher level, and especially in secondary schools at guidance level. So I would just advise that the schools aren't awaiting the arrivals. They're clearly anticipating the arrivals of the financial inclusion team to work alongside in partnership, but it's not the sole mechanism by which we would be mobilising that support for families. That support's been ongoing for several years in regards to any families that are struggling in that signposting, and clearly has been a fantastic function of the home link workers thus far in performing those roles. So I just wanted to add that in.
Chair, Councillor Cowan. Sorry, Chair.
Thanks very much, Linda. Elaine.
Thanks, Chair. It just feels like, although it's something quite negative that we're looking at, there's real progressive work going on here, and there's real opportunities to make a real difference to the lives of families living in our local authority area. The only other thought I have, and Linda jogged my memory there when she mentioned home link workers. I worry about the terminology that we're using sometimes, especially financial inclusion officers. That feels a bit negative to me. And we don't want to put any of these barriers up or stigmatise anyone. We want it to be an inclusive process, and actually for people to seek out and to support each other. And probably within the school environment, if that's getting done by word of mouth and normal processes, then that is fabulous work that we should be building on. So again, thank you to Andrew and the team for bringing this work and paper to our attention. But I think we're certainly going to keep an eye on you, Andrew. I think we're looking for more information. Thank you.
Yeah, Elaine, I've got to agree in terms of terminology. I was financial inclusion team within a school background seems a bit kind of awkward. I like to benefit maximisation or income maximisation, but I dare say, we went through there before. We get another form of words that just maybe is a better fit. That's maybe something that we can look at. But I think what we're hearing from members here is just the we're pleased on one hand that just to see the progress that's been made with home-like workers and financial inclusion, etc. But obviously the need for sensitivity here in terms of the number of letters, the involvement of other sheriff officers, and some of that quite important. And some of these things and the messaging that's in between that. And I think Elaine and others have just said to you that I think we will be looking for that detailed information, and I think Maureen mentioned that as well. That I think that's as we go forward, I think that's something we'd be looking for, because these are big issues for some of our children, that we need to look after. Members, any other points?
Chair, Councillor Mackay is looking to come in.
Thank you very much, Chair. And could I just say I very much welcome Councillor Barton's intervention in relation to backdating that money in relation to writing off debt. That's something that we know that I have asked for. And I just want to commend Councillor Cowan, particularly because I think a very good measure is the reduction in the number of debt letters that we're putting out. And, that's really creative thinking in relation to that. And I think that's something really positive. Again, when we're looking at what the figures are, Joe has helpfully explained to us the money that's there, where the 50,000 is coming from. We've got a figure in front of us at the September balances being at 33,586. So for me, I would be very happy to agree the recommendations, agree what Councillor Barton has said in relation to using the funding to backdate the debt, and that would include backdating the debt that we have at 33,586. And we have the source of where that additional funding can come from.
Thanks, Maureen. Yeah, I mean, I think if that could be absorbed in the recommendations, I think that would strengthen the paper a wee bit. Andrew or Linda, would somebody like to come in just?
Leader, if it's okay, if I could come in, and obviously, listening to what members are saying as proposals. I think it is also, proper to point out, the vast majority of parents, do pay, in terms of the school meals, and the profile of, where the debt comes from is outlined in paragraph 22 and 23. And absolutely, some of that debt comes from, people who are on, get the uniforms, clothing grant, but don't get school meals. but there also quite a lot of it comes from areas but not that. So it is a choice for members about, you know, how we direct the money. But I think it's only fair on the parents who do pay all the time that we point out that this is not a profile of only the poorest, you know, like parents who are not paying.
Okay.
Sorry, Chair, Councillor Mackay's looking to come back in.
Thank you very much, Chief Chair and Chief Exec. And I think at the end of the day, that's why the language is so important here. There is a differentiation between poverty and cost of living. It's something that I've said, it's something that I'll keep saying that. And again, Chair, I think it was in relation to Councillor Cowan talking rightly in my mind about the language around this. You mentioned and it's the difference then, isn't it, between benefit maximisation and income maximisation. Benefit maximisation carries a great deal of stigma around it. Income maximisation doesn't in that same way. So I think it is about sort of just recognising that and us being clear. Again, it's regrettable that we don't have that further breakdown of figures, which would allow us to be in a much clearer position.
Thanks, Chair. You've also got Councillor Maitland and Councillor Filson looking to come in.
What's it? Right. Councillor Maitland, yeah.
Thanks, Chair. It's on the debt management. I wonder, I was one of those parents that used the 4 weeks. So I was one of those that would only been classed as debt, but that's how I did it. I paid in monthly. So it'd be interesting to see if you took the figures out of those who were in debt every month, like myself was, how that would affect the remaining figures. So there's a couple of things here about debt management for the parents. And do we offer a standing order direct debit facility for the parents that would help manage their accounts? Another thing is, do we have a family account as opposed to separate sibling accounts? I'll just lighten the mood here and tell you with my twins, one twin constantly emptied the other twin's account. And I was left getting debt letters when actually I was sitting in surplus in another account. So possibly a family account might be something to look at. And I'm going to address what Barry said about the children getting their food taken off them, because it was myself that famously raised this. It was my own daughter that had her food taken off her. And it was changed, how things were managed were changed after that. And yes, we are going to have anomalies. There's an awful lot of children we feed, but perhaps staff training. It might have been a new member of staff, etc. If that can be incorporated into staff training, that you never confront a child over not having any money in their account, because what happened to my daughter was she'd had no breakfast. She then went to buy off the cart, had a bacon roll taken out of her hand. She then knew she had no money to pay for her lunch, so she didn't eat until she came home that day. So a bit of staff training, I think, might help towards that. In terms of language, yes, I think we have to be extremely careful with the language you use, and I agree with Maureen. There's a lot of words I don't like in the lane. Unfortunately, the financial inclusion team is actually FIT. That's the acronym. So it's unfortunate. For me, who doesn't like acronyms, it's actually a good acronym, but I think we should change the wording on that possibly. And I did ask about the family account. And if we're talking about food with dignity, I think when we go to paragraph 11, it just shows you when we treat people with dignity, the amount of things that can come out. The free food trolleys, the free poverty products, the free period products that go out there as well. So trying to, the fingerprint as well was a very good system when it worked, but unfortunately it doesn't always work in all the schools now. So it's treating our children with dignity and their families with dignity is what we're looking at here. So just a few questions on the how parents can manage their debt and whether that debt influences what our debt figures are when really they're not actually in debt, they're just managing their money on a monthly basis. So thank you.
Thanks, Claire. We'll just move on to Drew, then we'll get some of your points answered, Claire, but Drew.
Thanks, Chair. I've just got a wee quick question. It's no on the paper, it's in school meals, if that's okay, when I've got Andrew and Mark here. Okay, Douglas?
Yeah, absolutely.
With part of primary school closure with the dining room, the roof getting sorted, he's still quite happy with the delivery of how things is working for the community centre with the meals and the meals coming for Dringing.
I'll let Mark come in on that. Then I'll come back to Claire's points.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Wilson. Yeah, we had a review just before the holidays, and We are due to go up there again next week just to see how things are running. Yes, it is difficult for both sides, teams and the service. It is still in disposables, but we have engaged with the schools and they seem to be happy. We have had no other complaints since we were last up there, probably before we met with you and the community groups. But again, that's always under review up there.
That's fine, Mark. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Joe. We'll keep an eye on that one. Andrew?
Yeah, so I mean, I think firstly, just in terms of the points there around dignity, I don't think there's any doubt there are examples where the service has not met the expectations that we would want. But we do provide significant staff training. I think all our staff are locally employed people and absolutely care about the children that they're serving. We have a number of challenges, whether it's systems, whether it's guidance, etc., that we need to implement, and clearly it's a complicated service. We're also competing against a high street market, and people's expectations of what is and isn't delivered as well can change. So we do obviously develop and have significant training to support staff, and we would continue to do that. I think in terms of the language and the financial inclusion team, obviously I'm going to leave Joe to maybe address that tomorrow. And the other issues just around sort of family accounts, direct debits, etc. I think it's something we can look at, but understanding the systems, obviously it's the unique child that's set up within the system rather than the parent. But certainly we can look to discuss with Parent Pay how the initial part of that is set up in terms of how payments are made as well. I think that maybe.
It was if we took the 4-week debtors out of the figures.
Sorry.
Maybe that's one for tomorrow.
So in the paper, it does note that there's 7% of those debts. We can clearly see there's evidence of regular payments.
Thanks, Andrew. Okay,
Cheers.
members, anybody else want to come in here?
Councillor Cowan, Chair.
Certainly.
Thank you, Chair. Andrew, do we have any information from the Scottish Government on the implementation dates for P6, P7, universal free school meals? And how is East Ayrshire geared up to react to that and implement the universal free school meals? Are we in a good position that we could do it next month if that was the ask?
So there is no specific date being confirmed by the Scottish Government, although they have restated their intention recently. Part of the feedback from local authorities last year was that it was a challenge and there was a significant capital cost required to deliver the provision across Scotland, and that was part of the reason why 6 and 7 was delayed. We also recognised that obviously the delivery of a whole range of things that we've had to put in place in terms of changes to nutritional standards, obviously continuing to operate under COVID arrangements, really meant that expansion was going to be really challenging for all services across Scotland. I do think East Ayrshire is in a slightly better position than other authorities to be able to implement the full extent of it. However, we did also put in a request for additional capital funding, to be particularly for things like additional storage and some changes to kind of catering arrangements, and obviously some kind of additional kind of dining space, etc. But we do think we would be in a position to be able to deliver the service, but certainly that would be under sort of challenging circumstances until the implementation and commitment of those financial capital costs were able to be implemented.
Chair, Councillor Mackay.
Yes, certainly. Thanks. Thanks for that, Andrew. Morning.
Yeah, thank you very much. My understanding is, and perhaps Chief Exec or Director of Finance could confirm that the wording at the moment used by the position is that the Scottish Government are looking to do that as soon as possible, I think is the exact wording of the phrase. And unfortunately, though, the board that were set up to look at this haven't met since January 2022.
Through you, Chair. I don't know about the board, Councillor Mackay, but certainly picking up on Andrew's point, you know, Andrew through his national group and through Directors of Finance nationally, working in tandem to highlight that revenue cost and that capital cost, acknowledging that some councils, including ourselves, are able to implement fairly quickly, but again, being mindful of the additional cost that will accrue to councils and to council taxpayers from the policy. And so working in tandem to calculate the funding for both revenue capital is required.
Thanks, Maureen. I'm not aware about the board issue. That seems, 10 months without meeting on this subject. I mean, it is frequently discussed at COSLA, you probably know, but I mean, I don't mind asking that question on the national platform as well, because I mean, that's just, if that's been the case, that's just not acceptable. Okay, members.
Thank you. I mean, that's really helpful because, again, where I'm quoting that from is indeed from COSLA papers. So that's really helpful, Leader. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Maureen. Now, I mean, we're going to be able to have an opportunity to shape this again tomorrow when the cost of living report comes up in front of the full council. So, we'll revisit some of these areas. And I think, I think all members, it's been a good discussion on this. And I think we need some of that information, some of that granular information. We need that, particularly on the feasibility project at Loudon. And I think we need to get that to members as soon as we can. And I know it should be just not in agreement. I think it's available, so we should be able to get that, fairly soon to members. And in terms of the kind of, I think Andrew, I think and Eddie, I think what I understand from the questions in terms of the volume of letters and the issue of sheriff officers, etc. We want to carry on the good work of making more school meals available to children and making it easier for parents and custodians to pay. So we're very sensitive to that, and that is a very general terms, a sensitive area. So we'll obviously update members as this goes along. But I don't think we really need to particularly change the recommendations at this stage unless Eddie, to reflect some of the concerns, if you have any suggestions.
Councillor Douglas is looking to come in at this point, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I would ask that we do actually change the recommendations. So if you're formally moving the recommendation, I can come in as an amendment if that works. So.
Sorry, Barry, I was going to bring it from Eddie, just if Eddie had some suggestions there, just see if I would kind of meet some of the kind of issues that are coming from the floor.
Thanks, Chair. I think for us, we would need to be clear about the specific asks that's coming to us, in terms of changing the recommendation. As I understand, and I would need feedback, particularly around recommendation 3, whether there's a specific ask from across members of changing, like that. And also, Councillor Barton, you were looking for a change of one of the recommendations too.
Yeah, I'll just clarify, but I was going to mean in paragraph 35, the financial inclusion officers have the ability to award an 8-week free school meals. What I was thinking, people are in hard financial times at the moment, so I'd like the ability for the financial inclusion officers to backdate some of those free meals up to the 8-week period.
Thanks again. And so through yourself, so what we're really saying is in paragraph 3, allocate £50,000 for the cost of living funding to provide the facility for financial inclusion offers to offer discretionary free school meals up to 8 weeks and also consider existing debt. Councillor Douglas want to come in for that too.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I think on that basis, I can agree to that wording, but what I would rather see is an additional item where we would wipe the historic debt of £22,998. We can utilise at paragraph 3, bullet point 3, where we can use that allocation where applicable for some of the current debt, but meanwhile the historic debt I would move should be wiped. So that would be in addition to the £50,000.
Thanks,
Chair
Barry.
David, I think is looking to come in just to clarify. Apologies, Chair David.
It was just to say to try and, sorry, through you, Chair Member, it was just to say to try and keep it simple on the narrower point in relation to recommendation 3. It reads to offer discretionary free school meals for up to 8 weeks. All you would actually probably need to add there, including the option of backdating, but it's still a fixed period of 8 weeks. So whether it's 4 weeks behind and 4 weeks to the future or 8 weeks to the future, it's 8 weeks free meals. So all you would actually need to do is free school meals for up to 8 weeks, including the option of backdating where appropriate, and that covers that one. The other one's obviously a matter for Cabinet to determine in terms of how much money they want to throw at this.
Thanks, David. Can I maybe bring in Joe on the point of writing off debt, please? Joe, in terms of, there are obviously parents that have paid. What are the consequences of doing this? Is there any other kind of issues that we should be aware of?
Through your Chair, and it goes back to the point made just a few moments ago by the Chief Exec about the wider range of the people who are sitting with that debt. I suppose, it's important to note that, the financial regulations aren't a document that stands still and doesn't move. There's frequent write-offs passed to the Chief Monitoring Officer and I under delegated authority that allow us to write off debts that are not able to be recovered for a whole host of reasons, including low value debt. And I think this would fall into that low value debt. So, whilst there's a historic debt sitting, that is going through a process where over time it will eventually be written off as being a recoverable debt, and that the processes are in place for that. I suppose it goes back to the points that have been made today. There is, as I said, the process that would allow formal write-off to take place in due course through our already well-established processes, but at the same time mindful that if members are minded today to write off that part, then that write-off could take place. It would be set against that available cost of living money in order to facilitate that. But the process, as I said, is already there. You would be expediting that process through the recommendation and through agreement today, possibly.
Okay, so just to be in terms of what you're saying, we could be taking some of the money out of future cost of living, money that include rolling out the financial inclusion project. Is that what you're saying, Joe?
Yes, through your Chair. Yes, exactly. So, there's a debt outstanding, and you could, the word may be emotive, but there's technically a debt outstanding, and for that debt to be extinguished, you have to provide money to extinguish that debt. So in this instance, if approved by Cabinet, then the balance that's remaining in the cost of living report, that would also be used as a source to extinguish this debt. So the balance that would be remaining would be reduced.
So there could be just for monument. So there could be some of the debt that's out there that's actually backdated benefit, for example. Could that, the expanded financial inclusion team could get at? Would I be right in saying that?
There is a potential for that to be the case in some circumstances. I don't know the extent of it or the scale of it, but there's the options here today to provide discretionary and also to provide further information around benefit uptake and benefit or income maximisation. But there could be, but the scale of it I'm not aware of.
Thanks, Joe. Ian?
Thanks, Dougie. It was just really on Joe's point about there is processes in place. I mean, I think have to guard against taking this across the board. I mean, I think everybody's circumstances are different, and obviously when we drill down into the existing processes, then everybody's cases can be judged in their own individual merits. I'm a bit concerned about the extra travel here.
Chair, you've also got Councillor McMahon and Councillor Cowan looking to come in.
Okay, Jim?
Thanks, Chair. And just picking up what Joe said there, and also to reiterate what Ian had said, my concern would be that we'll come back again, and based on the figures for June and September, that we'll come back again looking at the same scenario in another 6 weeks' time. And if we're going to look at that and draw more funding for that, I think the processes are in place to deal with it. We've got them up. I wouldn't say they're perfect by in a manner of means. If there'd been plenty of funding available, part of that recovery had been sitting, that money had been sitting with a bigger pot, then it might have been achievable. But I think I'm content with the process if it's in place.
Thanks, Jim. And Elaine?
Thanks, Chair. Just picking up the points about the process that Joe has said and the earlier points made by Councillor Maitland. I think what we're saying here is we need further robust analysis of the debt so we know exactly what we're doing, because if we're just doing a simplistic writing off the debt, we're not actually getting to the root cause of what the debt is. Or whether it is, as the example given by Councillor Maitland, it's just people's financial management. Perhaps, you know, they're paid on a monthly salary cycle, etc., etc. So I think we need to have that robust analysis of the debt. And as Councillor McMahon has just pointed out, the debt in today's paper is historical debt, but it's a historical figure from June. So we don't actually know today what the debt figure is. So I think that would be that information and data that we would require to make an informed decision.
Chair, you've got Katie looking to come in and also Councillor Douglas looking to come back in.
Okay, I'll bring in Barry then, Katie, if that's okay.
Thank you, Chair. I think just to be clear, what I am proposing would be the historic debt. So it's not something that's going to be impacted on last month and somebody's now stepping in to catch up, because it is by its nature historic debt of the £22,998. I think we were to clear that as a recommendation item 7. In terms of 3, I think I accept and absolutely welcome what Councillor Barton has said in relation to the allocation of that £50,000. So that can be used for a period, whether it be 4 weeks before, 8 weeks before, so that immediate period where appropriate, because you're right, and Councillor Cowan has raised this, that you'll have people who, through their own financial management and when they get paid, and are there in a position to pay it. So, however, the historic debt clearly is there, it's not going away, and I would move that we add that as recommendation item number 7 with the amended item 3, and that would be what I'd be proposing.
Okay, thank you, Barry. Katie?
Yeah, it's probably just a wider point, just to offer assurance that, you know, we have the paper tomorrow coming to full council, and we will ensure that we build in indicators around this as part of our financial inclusion work, so members will be able to see over short periods of time the impact being made, and we'll make that one of the key performance indicators where we monitor debt levels to see that this work to build capacity is working. I think it's so important that we work to actually reduce debt in a sustainable way, so that actually this is going to help our families for the longer term. So it was really just to offer assurance that we'll have more detail on this tomorrow. But as you know, we only approved these measures about 4 weeks ago, and we are making really good mark in that. But the performance indicators will allow Cabinet and Council to track impact and determine whether there are further interventions required around debt. But for now, we're really keen to actually get in around the sustainable approach to that in terms of maximising income and reducing debt that way. And this will be a key indicator. So we'll ask John Dalton and Joe to work through that with the paper that they'll bring you later today, just in a briefing. But then going forward, as we invest a lot of money in these posts, we'll make sure that they're actually tracking that to see that it's making a difference. I'm not sure it helps that, but I think it's important to offer that wider reassurance and reflection. Perhaps this paper should have gone in the context of the cost of living paper, because the two things are inextricably linked.
Yeah, that's an absolute fair point, Katie, at the end there, because they are, we want to make sure we get it right. And I don't think folk are a million miles apart here, but it's just, in terms of, there is an issue of precedent that we have to kind of be careful of. Or kind of completely sympathise with the, if it's people who've got into debt with school meals, issues, because they can't afford it. That's something that we must, try and give support to. Members, any?
Apologies, Chair. Councillor Douglas.
Barry.
Chair, I think, in terms of the comments made around about some of the detail that I think we really needed in this paper that we haven't got, and I hear that, yes, absolutely, there's a decision to be made at Council tomorrow, that perhaps as a compromise, we would defer determination of this paper, subject to getting that additional information to, I think, allow us, because as I say, my concern remains about the historic debt. So that could be, if we were agreeable. If not, I would stand with the recommendation and the amendment I would propose. But I think it is something that possibly should have been taken in the round as part of the wider cost of living crisis, rather than this standalone report. But there is a lot of detail that I think throughout today's discussion from all sides of the chamber, members have asked for that we don't really have here.
Thanks, Barry. No, I think that's a fair point. I mean, we're going to have division here. We need division, but just, it seems as if as I've said earlier on, we're fairly close in this. And, we don't want that to, behind this there's a big message that we're actually, making significant inroads to mitigate cost of living as much as we can. And we've got a big paper coming in front of us tomorrow. And, we wouldn't want to dilute that message. So, I'm quite happy to defer any kind of decision on this until tomorrow. I don't know. I haven't had a chance to speak to my colleagues about that. I don't know what the rest of the group and the rest of the other members are thinking of that.
Sorry, Chair. David Mitchell's looking to come in.
David.
Yeah, it was just to confirm for the benefit of all members that in terms of the scheme of delegation, the general principle is it's always competent where it's considered appropriate for any committee or indeed officer with delegated powers to defer any decision that is competent to them up the tree, if you like, up the chain, if you like, from Cabinet to Council. So in theory, what's been suggested is achievable. In terms of timescale, the Local Government Scotland Act 1973 does technically require that any item to be considered by Council or any committee should be posted on the public notice board. It's a bit of an anachronism now. I don't know the last time anyone checked our public notice board at the entrance to here, but we do have to technically post them. The only exception from 3 working days notice of an item is where it's deemed additional and urgent. So if Cabinet was happy that this was urgent and required a decision at Council tomorrow and labelled it such, then we could justify taking it as a late item on the basis of urgency if that was an option that Cabinet wanted to take today, and I would leave it at that in terms of it's for Cabinet to decide what it wants to do.
Thanks, Dave. That's helpful. Colleagues, anybody else?
Chair Andrews looking to come in.
Yeah.
Chair, maybe just a couple of clarifications, I think, just in terms of where the discussion has got to. Maybe just picking up the issue around what's in the paper today and as opposed to what's presented at Council tomorrow. The paper tomorrow at Council does make reference to this paper and this issue. So I would think the cost of living paper could still provide an opportunity to add an additional recommendation into that paper tomorrow, even if the recommendations here were agreed at Cabinet today. The second issue, I think, maybe just for clarification in terms of further information. There is further information that we can provide at the moment in terms of the sort of amounts of debt within different categories, but clearly I think the interest in terms of that understanding of family circumstances isn't something that we would be able to provide in terms of the current information in our systems. that would be something that would be developed as noted within the financial inclusion officers and the work that they would be able to do at that local level on a case-by-case basis. So I just wanted to kind of be clear just in terms of the expectation. If there was further information for tomorrow, it wouldn't necessarily, I think, address a number of the concerns that have already been raised today. I think that information is only going to be possible until we start to implement a number of the areas. And then clearly in terms of the wider cost of living paper, then that would be drawn out in terms of some of those reporting mechanisms as we go through the next 6 months or so.
Okay, sorry, it's hard to. Any other comments? I mean, I'm quite happy to in terms of Andrew, just your compromise suggestion of moving to the gate today but adding a recommendation tomorrow. Could you maybe just say that again, please?
Yeah, I was just making the point that the cost of living report tomorrow does include reference to this paper and obviously the full funding that we've got around the cost of living. So whether there's an opportunity to kind of make a determination on some of the recommendations today and then add an additional recommendation at council tomorrow in terms of the wider cost of living paper, just obviously to try and maybe address some of the points that David's made in terms of this full paper being presented to council tomorrow. That was really my suggestion.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not exactly. I'm not sure that's a wee bit kind of. Just seems a wee bit kind of unnecessarily clumsy, and it's helpful, but I mean I don't think it clears matters then. David, do you want to come back in just to kind of summarise?
I don't know if I can add much, Leader or members, to what I said before. Strictly speaking, if Cabinet wanted to pass this matter in its entirety or in part to Council, then strictly speaking, any item going should comply with the 3 days notice unless there's emergent or urgent circumstances that would preclude that. If Council feels that the cost of living merits and meets that test, that it's important we get to a position in this, then Council, this could be deferred to Council if you wish. I'm not quite sure in terms of the principle of taking some decisions today and tomorrow. That feels a little bit bitsy, but the bottom line is we also need to be mindful of standing orders that in terms of continuity and consistency of decision making, there's the 6-month revisiting rule. So we need to be clear that anything we decided today wasn't then going to be revisited and possibly overturned tomorrow. So I'm not sure about part referral, but that would depend on which parts we're talking about determining today and which parts we're talking about referring. The bottom line is there's agreement on all the recommendations in front of you, bar one sticking point, which is some members of Cabinet remain minded to that the Council or Cabinet seek or take the decision to write off some of this historic debt. The point's been laid out, it's been discussed, the pros and cons, and Cabinet either takes that decision or decides it is a decision for Council, and simply by agreeing they would wish this to be dealt with as a matter of urgency, given the importance for the school communities, it could be added in tomorrow and any decision could be spliced in. But I think we would want to have it all dealt with at the one time in the one place, but that's for Cabinet to determine.
No, that's helpful, David. Thanks. It's not easy chairing these meetings remotely, trying to kind of get a wee bit consensus here, but I think I feel you're the stronger position. Just if we we're not revisiting this in 6 months or anything like that we're making a decision tomorrow. So, I think we should defer this till tomorrow. I think that's the cleanest way to deal with this. And get everybody's involvement for the consideration, which is a huge paper for us tomorrow. Because one of my concerns was, writing off the historic debt may affect the ability to carry out some of the ambitions within that cost of living paper. So that can all be ironed out tomorrow, I suppose, when we get the full thing in front of us. I'm happy if members agree and we defer it till then. Is there anyone otherwise minded? Okay. Katie. Oh, somebody had their hand up there. Okay, my system froze there. Did that, Christine, is that crystal clear? Aye, yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine, Chair. So we're ready to move on to the next item.
Right. Keep it right. I can't see the heads knocking, knowing they're shaking or whatever here. Okay, thanks for that, colleagues. The next item is the local heat and energy efficiency strategy. And is it Joe that's taking us through this? No.
It's Karen, Chair.
Karen, sorry.
Sorry, Chair, it's just end of education items.
So it is, yeah. Thanks, thanks, representatives. We'll let you. We'll see you next time. Okay. Right, Karen, item 4.
Thanks, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to update Cabinet on plans to ensure the Council meets its statutory requirement to prepare a local authority-wide local heat and energy efficiency strategy, which you'll hear as LEES or LHES, depending on who you speak to. And I'm not sure what the right way to say it is. I'm going with LEES. And to seek approval for external consultancy work to be procured. So the background to this is that as part of the new climate change legislation, a new requirement is fallen to local authorities to prepare LEES, and these must be produced by the end of December next year and implemented afterwards. So in terms of what a LEES is, it's an area-based long-term strategic framework of how all the homes, businesses and public buildings across the whole of the area, and not just our council stock, but all the buildings, could be altered to improve energy efficiency and decarbonise the supply of heat to those properties. And so it has to include proposals to alter the way buildings are heated in order to improve the energy performance of buildings and reduce the emission of greenhouse gases. And we've talked at length this morning about cost of living. It's obviously at the forefront of everybody's minds, and LEES contributes to this at a really strategic long-term level. So while it's not the primary function of it, it does play an important role in finding ways to reduce fuel poverty, as through the efficient heating systems, bills can be reduced. Paragraph 6 gives a wee bit of information about experience of a previous pilot scheme we did in the Kilmarnock area a few years back. Due to how complex and resource intensive it is to produce a strategy, and because we have to complete it by the end of next year, we are proposing that external support be procured to produce the strategy. We've also organised a steering group with officers across various departments of the council to oversee the process and thereafter the implementation of the strategy. And as we get more into this work, it will start to involve many other external stakeholders like the NHS and registered social landlords, and also in due course there will be a period of public consultation and engagement. Paragraphs 7 and 8 give some information on the guidance from the government associated with this task, and we were delivered 151 megabytes of that guidance last week, which we are working our way through. And paragraph 8 explains the funding position. So the Scottish Government has committed a funding package of £375,000 to be awarded as annual payments of £75,000 from 2023 to 2027 towards the production and implementation of the LEES. And so we'll get the first payment in April next year. But due to the timing of the work and the date the grant is due, we will have to underwrite initial costs from local development plan balances. It's kind of difficult to say exactly how much a LEES will cost because it's a new thing. I've done a wee bit of benchmarking and there isn't an awful lot known at the moment. There's just a couple of local authorities that have tendered, including Stirling, and the costs are looking to come in between about £50,000 and £60,000. So that initial £75,000 does look to cover the cost of the preparation of the strategy. There's a range of implications, paragraphs 14 to 21. There's not really any intent to pick up on just now. And just to conclude, this is a new obligation. It's an important piece of work in terms of our response to climate change, and I'll just take you to recommendations in paragraph 2 and any questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Karen. Any questions or comments? Sir?
Councillor McMahon, Chair.
Yeah.
What a challenge. What a challenge because of the uncertainty. Decarbonisation is an easy word to say. How we go about that process and the strategy for that, where all the uncertainties that sit and surround us now run about, and really currently run about air source heat pumps, irrespective of the COP position on them, for every kilowatt burn producing 3 or 4. There's increased costs currently run about that for people. The onset of the hope of hydrogen is still sitting there, and also the ability in the future, hopefully working with the core and district heat pump systems, has massive implications. So to come up with a full strategy around about decarbonisation and to hit the targets around about 2030, and I've got to remind people targets have many rings on them. The prime is the bull. Run about that, and that's the big target. However, we just need to be conscious of that, run about the targets that we're setting for. So for 2030, run about the uncertainty, run about the strategy for this. As I said before, it's described in there. It's a complex methodology. I think it's right to say that. It's clear but complex. So it's a strategy that it's not an envious task. That's why I see Karen setting out that strategy.
Chair, you've got Councillor Ingram looking to come in.
Thanks, Christine. Neil.
Thanks very much, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to ask, given the fact that we've got a large estate of buildings and lots of roof space, where does solar come into our thinking when it comes to this area about decarbonisation of energy?
As we'll pass that over to Andrew to lead from the property management side.
So, I mean, I think the issue with the lease is obviously across the whole of East Ayrshire. So this is around domestic properties, businesses, as well as the council's own properties. And ultimately what comes out of it is a list of action areas that will be different building types, etc. And the methods of energy generation and other aspects are part of it. This particular area is around the decarbonisation of heat. So it tends to be kind of slightly different than obviously the energy or electricity generation that would be part of it. Certainly we are looking, and again, as part of some of the work around core, but of other areas that we are looking at is to see what is the different ways and best ways we can harness local energy rather than obviously linking into the grid, etc. Some of the evidence we have at the moment is, as you maybe not be surprised to know, that wind energy is more effective in this area than solar. So it may be that that would be more likely to do, but clearly any of our new builds, as part of the building designs, we do include a significant solar arrays. So the likes of the Barony campus has got significant amounts of solar as well. But that retrofitting of solar is maybe one that we're looking maybe more around some of the wind in terms of more some local supply. And again, as Councillor McMahon has mentioned, there's a few other areas that are still developing. And again, it's about where maybe some of that funding comes from to support it.
Councillor McMahon, Chair.
So just on that in solar that we've recently fitted on the properties in Rungan, I had an inquiry run about that, about whether there was a feed-in tariff by the council or who would get the feed-in tariff if there was one. Well, apparently there's no feed-in tariff. It was described to me, because we don't have battery storage, that the energy produced at the time of usage is where the gain is. So just to be clear on that, other than having battery storage in the houses, there's no feed-in tariff, or the gain is at the time of use. And again, if it's producing energy at that time, that's where the household will benefit from it.
Leader, if I can.
Thanks, Eddie.
I suppose it's important for me to reflect, because we get into this at CMT as well. This is dead interesting stuff, but this paper is actually just asking us to actually develop the strategy that during that discussion, and also the work that Andrew leads in terms of climate, that will actually give real opportunities to discuss all the different options But because one of the issues that when we first looked at this money was saying we need to be clear to everybody, this is about the money to develop the strategy. It's not actually the tens of millions of pounds it would require to actually deliver it. So this is a narrower paper, if I can say that today, an important paper to get us into the discussions and to facilitate the discussions where we can go into all this in real depth.
Thanks, Eddie. Anything else?
Nope, I think that's everybody, Chair.
Thanks, Christine. Okay, we'll just go straight to recommendations. Can we agree the recommendations? Take it as aye, yeah. Next item is the East Ayrshire Health and Social Care Partnership extension to adult services contracts. Is that yourself, Joe?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Colleagues, the paper in front of you is seeking an extension to 2 HSCP mental health and learning disability contracts for a period of 18 months. That's to allow a best value service review, which will take 9 to 12 months, followed by a full tendering process, which will take another 6 months. On the 31st of March 2021, Cabinet approved an extension to these 2 contracts until August of this year. This was in recognition of the impact of COVID and to allow work to commence in terms of the best value review programme. The 2 contracts in question are, one is a framework contract for services for adults with mental illness, learning disability, physical disability or autism. 5 different providers contribute to this contract. The second contract relates to a single service called UCAN, which provides community-based support through a social enterprise. In reality, the ongoing impact of the pandemic has been considerably longer and tougher than initially anticipated. Plans are now underway to commence the best value service review, but up until now, due to work pressures and staff vacancies, it has not yet commenced. The current contracts lapse at the end of August this year. However, procurement and legal have advised that we continue to operate as business as usual with insurance, invoicing and monitoring in place. Throughout the period, all of these providers have performed well and demonstrate positive outcomes for service users. Extending the contracts for 18 months would also offer some stability for both service users and providers at this time when social care is facing somewhat of a challenge around recruitment and retention. It should be noted that during the extension period, people can still continue to choose to have their care from a different provider using their option of self-directed support. The IJB considered this proposal in detail last week on the 19th of October and approved the extension and confirmed that funding is in place. So Cabinet are asked today to approve that the contract can be extended in accordance with standing orders. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Joe. Any comments or questions for Joe?
Councillor McMahon and Councillor Mackay, Chair.
Okay.
Thanks, Chair.
Jim? Yeah.
Joe, just for me, it's on paragraph 7, and obviously the delay has been done to staff turnover. Has that been resolved?
Yes, Councillor, both in terms of our commissioning team and in our operational services, vacancies have now been filled.
Thanks very much, Chair. I accepted what was said at the IJB last week, was happy to accept that. Joe, I think what you're hearing here is it's just going and no do it again.
Yeah, I think that point's well made. Okay, anyone else?
No, that's everybody, Chair.
Thanks, Christine. Can we go to recommendations in paragraph 3? Agree? Agree, yeah, thanks. Okay, now move exclusion of press and public. Agree,
Thanks,
yeah.
Chair. If you could, can you just give us a minute just for the press to leave, and can we ask IT colleagues to stop the recording? Thanks.